thank you so much for coming to Volvo's EV Clinic. This is the second edition. We're thrilled to have you here to dive into the world of electric vehicles and electrification. Now, my name is Angelique Teo, and I'm going to be your moderator for this afternoon's session. We have a panel of fantastic experts that are going to be seated up here with me who are going to be sharing their insights and expertise on a range of topics when it comes to electric vehicles. Now, before we move on, I know all of you have the placards. They also work as fans if you're a little bit warm. Now, on the placards, you'll see a yes and you'll see a no. So I'm just going to be asking you a quick question. Who currently is an owner of an EV? So yes or no? Just hold it up. Okay, quite a few yeses, more no's. So that brings me to my next question. Are you interested in owning an EV? Yes or no? Fantastic. I see all those no's switch to yes. Okay, very good. Now, I know you may already know about electric vehicles, but just as a little introduction, electric vehicles, or EVs as they're better known as, represent a huge shift in the automotive industry. Now, they offer a cleaner, more sustainable alternative to the traditional internal combustion engine, also known as ICE. Now, in 2017, Volvo Cars became the first premium car brand to announce its commitment to full electrification. In early 2022, Volvo Cars Singapore launched its first fully electric vehicle, the XC40 Recharge, and followed by the C40 Recharge in September, and the new EX30 was unveiled earlier this year. Now, you'll see all of them on display here at New Baru. We have the EX30, the EX40, as well as the EC40 all on display. Now, there are more EVs to come. The long-term aim is to become a fully electric car company and to aim to reach net zero greenhouse emissions by 2040, which is really not far off. Now, by 2030, which is only 6 years away, Volvo Cars aims for 90 to 100% of its global sales volume to consist of electrified cars, including fully electric and plug-in hybrid models. Now, as I mentioned here at the Volvo Electrified event, we have our full range of fully electric vehicle lineup. You'll see the EX30, EX40, and the EC40, all accompanied by displays that highlight their respective characteristics. So it depends on what you're looking for. You'll see all the description of what that car can do for you and your family. Now, each of these models really embodies Volvo's commitment to electrification, blending cutting-edge technology, as well as their signature Scandinavian design. Now, with electrification at the core of its business and more EVs on the way, it is a natural progression for Volvo to move into educating and sharing various aspects of EVs, as well as how you can own and maintain your EV. But I don't want you to just hear it from me or Volvo. We have invited, as I mentioned earlier, a panel of experts to share their unbiased views on what it really is like to own an EV here in Singapore. So we're going to welcome them one at a time. First, we have Mr. Christopher Tan, retired senior transport correspondent from the Straits Times. He'll be able to provide us insights into understanding EV ownership and consumer perspectives as well as trends. Next, we have Dr. Yvonne Tan, who is Vice President and Head of Tech Hub at Volvo Cars Singapore. She's going to elaborate on the role of technology in advancing EVs and Volvo's commitment to sustainability. She'll also be able to share insights on her personal experience as an EV owner, which will provide a practical perspective on the topic today. Next, we are joined by Mr. Goh Chi Keong, Chief Executive Officer of Charge Plus. Now, he's going to be discussing EV charging infrastructure and the latest developments in EV policies, and he's really going to give you no reason not to own an EV. You'll see what I mean later. Finally, we have Mr. Alistair Eng, Volvo's product specialist, who will talk about Volvo's safety features. Volvo is known for their safety as well as EV maintenance, and clarify any doubts you may have as you move into your ownership of a Volvo EV. So our first topic, we're going to dive into understanding EV ownership and what to look out for. So I'm going to pose this question to Christopher. Are Singaporeans ready for electric vehicles?
Okay, I think can't speak for 5.9 million of us, but if you look at new registration of vehicles this year, in the first half, I think EV penetration is about 30%, just slightly over 30%. That would seem to suggest that at least a good proportion of us are ready for EV adoption. But of course, that is just the start. As a proportion of the total vehicle population, electric cars are just merely 2 point something percent, less than 3% of the population. It's a long way to go. My personal forecast would be that to reach about 30% of population, it will take us maybe 20 odd years. A lot of that depends on how things go in the next 3 years or so, because in the next 3 years, COE supply is going to be at its cyclical peak, and depends on what policies are going to be like in that next 3 years. That would shift people either towards EVs or away. So yeah, I think we are ready. Some of us are ready, but I think more of us will be ready as infrastructure grows, charging infrastructure grows. Right now, there are about 6,000 to 7,000 chargers. I think, Chee Kiong, you can enlighten us further later. But that's still far away from our target of 60,000 chargers by 2030. Even if we reach 60,000, given our vehicle population of 650,000 vehicles, cars alone, 60,000, that even if it's half of that, 300,000, that's, you're going to share about 3 cars per charging point. Is that the right ratio or not? I don't know. I think when people switch to EVs, they have to be mindful of that. And I think people are also mindful of a lot of other considerations.
Yeah, which brings me actually to my next question, because we had a few EV owners say, yes, they already own an EV, but we had more that said they want to own an EV. So what should they be mindful about before making that decision to buy an EV?
Well, I think the short answer to that is that firstly, I think if you thinking that you're going to save money, the sad news is that you're not going to, right? I think from cradle to grave analysis, buying an EV is not going to save you money. It will save you on fueling cost, because charging an EV costs about roughly 30% per kilometer less than a ICE equivalent, an average ICE equivalent. If you're driving a hybrid, then the equation is slightly in favor of ICE. Not so much in favor, but slanted towards. So it's about 30% now. But if you buy an EV, you have to be mindful of higher road tax generally, higher insurance costs generally, and also when it comes to scrapping your vehicle, you will have a lower rebate than, say, an equivalent ICE car. That's because you are enjoying the rebate of owning an EV, acquiring an EV upfront. The rebate is taken off your ARF, and your scrap rebate is based on your ARF. And there's also some evidence to suggest that resale value thus will be also a bit less than an equivalent ICE. So if it's cost savings that you're looking for, then I think the answer would be a flat no. But of course, driving an EV comes with a lot of positive outcomes as well. I think one of the best things about an EV is that it has immense torque. So for drivers, you can enjoy a lot of, oomph, acceleration. The minute you step on the gas, it just goes, and it goes without noise, right? I mean, for an ICE, if you will notice people on the streets, when they want to go, there's a lot of sound and fury, and it can be irritating to, pedestrians and other people. For electric car, you want to go, you just go, and it's instant, and it's noiseless and vibration free. So that's the driving part of it. The other part, of course, is the sustainability. An EV, because of the electric drivetrain, is definitely more efficient in translating energy into motion. For IC, a lot of it is lost in heat and friction. For electric, it's a lot more efficient, even if you factor in the transmission loss. The argument that, what's so green about EVs? We still use fossil fuels to power up our cars, right? Yes, but the power stations are quite far flung away from where we live, work, and play. Whereas vehicles are very close to where we live, work, and play. So the air quality, if we have an EV population, will be much better, especially for the heavy vehicles, the buses and trucks. If they are electric, the amount of particulate matter that we breathe in every day while waiting at a bus stop or walking by the streets will be much lower. And mind you, chronic respiratory illnesses in Singapore is the top 5 of all chronic illnesses. And for the amount of particulate matter in the air, Singapore still has a way above what WHO recommends. And this is the old recommendation. WHO, I think 2 years ago, just raised the standard further to say that, to have a healthy pair of lungs, you should have a much lower PM 2.5 or even the larger particulates, which when going to our lungs stays there and very hard to get out. And so that would be the point of an EV. That would be the purpose that you want to go into an EV: sustainability, better air, and of course what I mentioned earlier, drivability. Right? Even a very budget entry-level EV will outperform a lot of medium-ranged ICE cars.
Thank you, Christopher. That was very, very interesting. Obviously, there are lots of pros, but there are some cons. I mean, there are some people that you've really burst the bubble of people saving money when it comes to EVs. But a lot of people are hesitant to have an EV as a first car because they think it's expensive. There are still some other pros to buying an EV when it comes to cost-wise. A lot of these vary. So can you give us some thoughts about that, like your maintenance and everything else, your post-buying?
So ownership, I think your running costs, of course, you have about 30% less than the equivalent ICE because of charging. Charging will cost you about 30% less than refueling. That's based on public chargers. If you have your own charger at home, of course, you will have even a wider gap. Maintenance, evidence shows that there is less maintenance for EVs, less moving parts, less lubrication, less filters. But on the flip side, there's some evidence that suggests that tires will wear out a bit faster because of the high torque. Then the other thing would be repairs, right? And that relates to the higher insurance costs, because the insurers project a higher repair cost when it comes to accidents when an EV collides with another vehicle. But of course, try not to get in an accident. And anyway, your higher premium will take care of that. Again, there's not enough evidence in Singapore because the EV population here is pretty small and young. But elsewhere in the world, there were reports that insurers were writing off EVs after a collision because nowadays the battery is incorporated with the chassis. It's part of the chassis. So when there is a side collision, oftentimes the battery is damaged. And because it is very costly to repair, the insurers would rather write off the vehicle. And of course, if you do that, then of course the sustainability part goes out the window. But accidents, of course, they're not on an average basis, statistics-wise. You're likely to see or experience one accident every 5 years. So of course, that's not distributed equally amongst everybody. But if you take stats alone, one every 5 years.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you. So Yvonne, just to follow up with after what Christopher has said, what made you buy an EV? You are an EV owner, so when did you buy your EV?
Well, I bought it like last year, somewhere in March. So the fact that I was always like early adopters for technology, so I want to play with stuff, and I've been procrastinating for years, to be fair, because EV has been around for quite some time. Then I was always procrastinating in the fact that I always give myself a lot of reasons which are valid, like where's the charging point, where's the infrastructure, how do I get it convenient? I don't want to be stuck with somewhere that I cannot go for the last mile. Like, I mean, I'm so used to IC that you can see a petrol kiosk almost like every 200 meters and stuff like that. Even worst case, I do have friends that drive to the last drop of their petrol. They can bring a container, get it and refill. They say, what I'm going to do with an EV? I probably need somebody to push the car, but it will be heavier. So that will be a problem. Then it's last year, March, that I tell myself, you know what, stop procrastinating, stop giving yourself excuses, just go and try. As in get one, not to try an EV, because everybody was telling me in terms of your heavy food, in terms of response, as what Christopher mentioned just now, you don't need a test drive an EV because it will respond. Yeah, there's no point of testing. But the fact that all the worries that even my estate doesn't have a charging point. So I was like, I'm still procrastinating because I was thinking that once they set up the charging point, then I will switch. But it never happened because every year when they renew, they say, no, I'm not going to install. Then I keep delaying and procrastinating. That's okay, maybe when my parents' place has it, I will change. They keep changing. That's why last March, I just walked into and bought one. And that changed my mind totally. And because I think as human beings, we are kind of smart, we can adjust. So in fact, my parents' place, my friends' place, everywhere else, I couldn't find a charging point, but there's a charging point at my workplace. In fact, that was the easiest and so-called cheapest because there's AC charging and DC charging, and AC is slightly lower cost. And in the office, I can afford the time to put it there for 5 hours or whatever it takes. And I use AC charge, and then I can just remove it when I'm done from my meeting and stuff. And I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to remove the car if it's in my estate. So in fact, that was a better turnout as a kind of a user aspect point of view. And of course, in terms of infotainment and stuff, it was like very easy with my Apple Play. And then the frustration of like sometimes it doesn't get connected when I use my ICE before. And every time when I get my previous ICE, I have to change all the sound system and everything because of the road noise that it creates. The EV is, as what Christopher mentioned earlier as well, is so quiet. Sometimes am I still driving? Or I'm actually worried about the pedestrian around me that I cannot go too fast when there's passenger pedestrian on the road to make sure that I give them enough space, because even though the pedestrian, I'm not in their path, but you don't know when they will jump out. Because back then I can hear at the back of my head that the taxi is coming or whatever is coming based on the engine noise. But for EV, you don't. But of course, good thing is now they're creating music so that they can actually sound other road users to be mindful.
Yeah, that's true. Anybody here, the ones that are thinking about buying EVs, is the fact that you're gonna find it hard to charge your EVs. Is that what's stopping you from buying an EV? We've got one yes. Any yeses because of the infrastructure for charging? I got one more coming up. No, yes. Okay, quite a few yeses. So that brings us to Chi Kyung. Chi Kyung, you're here to convince everybody that they shouldn't be worried about charging infrastructure because you've got some solutions from Charge Plus.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about EVs, it's very hard to divorce yourself from talking about EV charging infrastructure. And at the heart of it all, I always use this term called psychology. Why do I say psychology? Because according to many neutral people, right, they say Singapore is the best place on earth to have EVs, right? Because if you drive very far in Singapore, you end up in the ocean. Right? Singapore is an island, city-state, obviously, and the average mileage of an EV today is 400 kilometers. the average driving distance of a driver typically in Singapore is only 50 kilometers. And there's already ample EV charging points across Singapore. But at the heart of it all, there's still a lot of range anxiety. It's very typical, it's very expected. And that is one key impediment to a lot of people wanting to consider EVs seriously. But the good news is that the landscape is changing rapidly. So across Singapore, and if I use Charge Plus as an example, right, we are one of the key charging operators in Singapore. We are actively proliferating EV chargers across condominiums. I was just chatting with some of the folks here. You live in condo? Yeah, no chargers, right? And I was talking to Angel. Angel is maybe getting an EV, but also no chargers in the condo, right? So if you are living in a condo, no chargers, that's a bugbear, right? If you live in HDB, and I was just chatting with the EV Woon, later he will share more. HDB also very crucial to have EV chargers. So the landscape is getting very positive. Today, there are 14,000 EV charging points in Singapore, 14,000. But the not so good news is that half of that actually is in landed homes. Half of that is landed homes, right? So obviously, it's not accessible by the public. So that leaves only 7,000. But the growth rate of the public charging points is actually tremendous. So if I use Charge Plus as an example, today we have 2,000 plus charging points, but we are very busy. We are ramping up very quickly, condominiums, HDB, shopping malls, etc. And I will share a little bit more. If you drive across the causeway, we are even putting up chargers in Malaysia, right? So you were just asking me about chargers in Malaysia because thinking of driving to Malaysia soon, right? Now, so I mentioned about HDB. The goal of the government, that includes LTA and HDB, is to have every HDB car park to have EV chargers in the next 1 to 2 years. Every HDB car park in the next 1 to 2 years will have EV chargers. Today is already half. Half of all HDB car parks have EV chargers. There's still some way to go, but we, among several operators in Singapore, are actively putting in chargers. So HDB, that mindset, that a challenge would go away because you're going to have EV chargers at your doorsteps. And we can go on to condominiums. Condominiums is still a long way to go. That's our track record. You can see a lot of the small fonts there. I don't think you can read the words there, but it's actually, we are a major player for condos. And the business model is zero cost to the condo. So we as a company, Charge Plus, we will invest in the EV chargers at zero cost to the condo, and we will earn the so-called the revenues from the usage of the chargers from the EV drivers. So we bear the risk from market demand. If there are hardly any drivers, then we bear the business risk. But that is our business model, and that has become the dominant business model in condos. Right. So for some of you guys are considering to get a Volvo EV, you live in condo, no chargers, come to me. Right. I will offer you a solution. Yeah. That includes your condo.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, and these are some examples of condos that we serve in Singapore, right? The likes of Interlace, Dilliden, Upmore Park, etc. Right. Now, the other question that pops up is that, hey, yes, I have so-called overnight chargers in HDB condominiums, but what about fast chargers? What about DC chargers? They are much faster than the average AC charger, right? So if I can draw the distinction between AC and DC chargers. DC chargers, usually the charging experience is half an hour, roughly half an hour. AC chargers are very good for residential settings, condominiums, HDB. You run the charging for about 3 hours to 4 hours overnight, right? So you go to sleep, you plug in. From my statistics, the peak power usage for my chargers, 11 p.m. 11 p.m. People come home at 7, 8, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and they're still charging away at 11 p.m. So my stats peaks at roughly 11 p.m., right? And a lot of the charging actually runs until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. But these people are all sleeping at night, right? Following day, 7 p.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., they'll pick up the car and off they go. That is the average charging habit for people that have chargers at the doorsteps. But that still doesn't cater to a lot of the other EV drivers that have much higher mileage, right? So if you are, say, a private hire driver, right? If you happen to run long distances in a single day, then you want to have convenience of a fast charger, typically in shopping malls, to complement the slow chargers that you have in residential settings. So Charge Plus as a company, we have lots of fast DC chargers in shopping malls across Singapore, as well as other industrial and commercial buildings. The last point I'll raise is this. We get a lot of questions. I don't want to buy an EV because I drive to, meet my parents in KL sometimes, or they live in Johor. How do I drive my EV to Malaysia? Well, lo and behold, actually, Malaysia EV charging infrastructure is also proliferating quickly. We ourselves as a company, Charge Plus, we are actually building a 5,000 kilometer fast charging network from Singapore all the way to Bangkok, then to Phnom Penh, to Vietnam, all the way north to Hanoi of Vietnam. So that's 5,000 kilometers. To be honest, I don't think many Singaporeans are going to drive to Hanoi anytime soon, right? But I welcome Volvo to do a road trip to somewhere along the way. Chris, maybe you should have a vacation in the EV with us.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so therefore, there should be peace of mind. You buy an EV, you're heading up north, range anxiety should not be a problem for you as well, right? So effectively, you may have a whole list of concerns about EV chargers. Are there ample EV chargers? Are there fast chargers? Can I drive to Malaysia or not? All these challenges all steadily going away. Within 1 to 2 years, I'm very confident that the picture will become even better than what we see today, right? Get ready to buy an EV, yeah? All right.
Christopher, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess being an early adopter also has got one advantage, and that is the ratio of vehicles to chargers is kind of low now, because the chargers are proliferating at a faster rate than the car population. So as early EV owners, you will have access to more chargers more easily than if, let's say, 3 years down the road when things pick up and there are a lot more vehicles on the road, you'll find that people are, looking for a charger. You might have to queue, right? The thing is that, yes, the average range of an EV is around 400. But mind you, I think a lot of EV manufacturers will recommend that you do not deplete the battery down to below 20% and not to charge it above 80%. So in effect, you are actually looking at 60% of 400. And even though that the average mileage that Singaporean clock a day is 50, it is not equally distributed. You'll find that over Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the mileage actually peaks, right? Whereas Monday to Thursday is kind of low because you are just going to work and back. So where there are some behavioral changes that you need to be mindful of when you buy an EV, and that is to keep your charge at the high as you approach the weekend.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let's bring Alistair into the conversation when talking about maintenance, battery, and everything else. What can you advise Volvo owners or future EV owners to do when it comes to maintaining it at its optimum?
Well, I think generally, Chris and even Yvonne has covered a few points. So I think the main difference is that if you have an EV, there's a lot of things you don't have to do in terms of maintenance. So for example, if you take the case of for Volvos, if you buy a petrol internal combustion engine model from Volvo, the service interval is 1 year or up to 15,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. But if you buy an EV, there's actually the maintenance interval is actually twice of that. So it's 2 years or 30,000, whichever comes first. And eventually, when you bring your EV in for servicing with Volvo, we don't actually do a lot of things to it because there's not a lot of moving parts associated with a Volvo. You skip things like transmission oil change, engine oil change, injectors, timing belts. You don't have all of this on an EV. So when you bring your EV for servicing and maintenance with Volvo, what actually happens is that your internal cabin filter will be changed. And we also do a check of to make sure that your car has been updated to the latest software. We'll do a health check of your 12-volt battery. There's actually a 12-volt battery in most EVs, in case you don't know. And also we'll do a health check of your batteries, as well as to check your brake fluids, as well as the coolant of the battery, as well for the battery itself. And we also check consumables such as the conditions of your brake discs, as well as your brake pads. Yeah. And maintenance-wise, I think Chris just now has mentioned a very important thing is about the tires. So for EV, because generally they have a higher weight than a normal petrol model. So what actually happens is that there's more wear and tear on your tires. And it will actually be even worse. You actually accelerate if you are a very heavy footer with your EV, because the electric motor generates instantaneous torque. So this creates additional wear that you usually will not see that much on the internal combustion engine model. So check your tires more often and make sure that you pump them up to a slightly higher tire pressure, because my experience is that we have a few Volvo EV owners who have transitioned from internal combustion engine, and they didn't know that for EVs you actually need to run a higher tire pressure, because you need the tires to be there at a higher tire pressure to handle the additional weight of the EV. Yeah, so usually we are looking at about 30, more than 38 psi. Usually if you drive a petrol car, you will not pump that high. You'll probably keep it at 30, 32, or maybe 33 at the max. Yeah. So this is something to take note of. And when it comes to tire replacement, please always take note that you do not have to go for EV specific tires, because right nowadays there's a lot of tire companies, the leading tire companies, they market their tires as for EV, recommended for EV, optimized for EV. Yes, that's true, because they made some changes to the rubber compounds. They made some change. They even have noise cancellation foam in the tires. So, when you are driving an EV, you don't want to hear that road noise from the tires, right? Yeah, so, but it's not 100% necessary that you buy very expensive. Usually they are more expensive EV specific tires. What is important is that you need to check the load rating of your tire. You need to make sure that they are the same or better than your stock tires that come from the factory. Yeah, load rating is important because, the EV is heavier. You need your tires to withstand the load. Yeah, speed rating is not that relevant in Singapore because we don't really go up that high speeds. Yeah. So this is what I can share offhand. Yeah.
Those are some great tips.
Yeah.
The tires, the pressure, and everything. Now, Alistair, Volvo has always been known for its commitment to advanced safety features. So we're going to touch on that now, on how Volvo integrates the safety technology into the EVs.
Yeah. So I think most of us here today, we know that Volvo is a brand that is synonymous with safety. So Volvo, as a car manufacturer, even before they started building electric vehicles, they already have the know-how, and it's in their DNA of how to build a safe car first, fundamentally. So with all the EVs that you buy from Volvo here today, basically you already have the Volvo safety DNA built into the car. So generally for the EVs that you buy from Volvo today, you can see it's divided into preventive safety as well as protective safety. So when we say preventive safety, we are talking about the use of sensors, radars, ultrasonic sensors, and things like that to detect, traffic in front of you, to make sure that to prevent you from getting into a collision at the first place. So Volvo has always been at the forefront of such safety technologies, and I think we are one of the earliest to have autonomous emergency braking being installed in our standard production cars. I think that was back in 2008. Yeah, so that was a very long time ago. That is way before most of other manufacturers. In fact, nowadays you can see a lot of the new cars that you can buy from the market. They already have all these safety features as standard. Adaptive cruise control, forward collision prevention, blind spot monitors. All this is pretty standard nowadays. Yeah. And when I talk about protective safety, that is actually the chassis, the body shell of the EV, the hardware itself. So this is when preventive safety fails you, you have to go head on with a collision, in the unfortunate collision. So what actually happens is that Volvo actually put in a lot of thought and a lot of re-engineering into the chassis of the cars. So for example, if you have XC40 EV and you are coming from a XC40 ICE, just to use your car as an example, so the general shape of the car is the same, right? Yeah, it's all very familiar to someone coming from an XC40 to a XC40 EV version. But actually, underneath the body shell, there's a lot of re-engineering work being done to the car. Because when you remove the engine from the engine compartment and you add in 500 kgs of battery underneath the car, how your body shell will react and change in the event of a head-on collision or from any other direction, it changes completely. The crash dynamics have changed completely. So Volvo has done a lot of re-engineering in terms of by beefing up the passenger compartment, and they did a lot of re-engineering, particularly at the front of the car, which you can also see in the cutout of the EC40 that we have behind. Yeah, so that's actually laid bare for everyone to see. So the red areas, they are actually using a lot of ultra high tensile steel to protect the passengers of the cars in the passenger compartment. At the front, the lower crash beams has also been revised, and there's actually a special offset, a design of the car to offset the car that has crashed into you if you have a head-on collision. So it deflects some of the energy away from the passenger compartments. And as well as that's unique to Volvo is that the battery pack is actually in a armored enclosure. We call it a unique battery safety cage that is unique to Volvo. So they actually over-engineered the battery pack that is on the XC40 and the C40, which in today's terms, that the same models are EX40 and EC40. Yeah. So these are just some of the things that you can see on the cars here today. And moving on to the next few years, next year we will have the EX90 here in Singapore. That is taking things to another level in terms of preventive safety. We're going to make things even safer. So LiDAR is going to take over things like radar. We're going to have radars on the car as well as LiDAR. So LiDAR is essentially using laser pulses to sense objects and traffic in front of you. So that's different from radar. Radar using radio waves. So to make it less technical, it's like, for example, you look at me, I'm short-sighted, right? So radar is like, I take off my glasses. I can see there's like a chair and a person in front of me. I make sure when I walk, I don't knock to them. But LiDAR will be like, I put on my glasses. I know this is a person and she's a lady. And this stool here is white. I make sure when I walk, I don't talk into it. So in terms of the detection range, the clarity, and the overall resolution is going to be a lot better. So starting with the flagship model is going to be eventually distilled down into the lower models below the range. So for example, like EX60 that's coming a few years down the road. So eventually we will see more and more of this technology being cascaded down into even the entry levels models from Volvo. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. I'm glad you started talking about the models that are coming out, because my next question is actually for Yvonne. So can you tell us about what we can expect to see in the future of Volvo EVs? What's coming up? What can you share at least?
I think I would say I cannot share, but then he shared quite a bit of it already. But even also on the fact that I think like what he mentioned about it, safety is in our DNA. In fact, as you guys mentioned that, I mean, I joined Volvo for a year now, and then it's like Singaporean pride that we now have a tech hub in Singapore. And then people will be asking me, technologies and people interested in automotive, I say, which car model is going to be made in Singapore? I wish I can say that, but we need to know that automotive, a car, is not just a product. It's a freedom for us to move. It encapsulates a lot of technology in it. I'll be happy to say in the future, there will be technologies that Singaporean team are involved to develop. But then the fact that we need to know that safety is in our DNA and we don't compromise, we optimize it. Because for example, like safety belt, you and me, some of us, I hate to wear the safety belt, but we know it's good for us. It's just like some medication, we don't like it, but it's good for us. And also when I convert into an EV, when a collision, I think some of you might also have that trouble. It's like, I hate it because it's an anti-collision mode. But you will know that this function is so important. Like some of the accident would not have happened out there when they actually backfill and then you knock into someone. This will not happen into a Volvo car because of the safety aspect that it actually stopped before you actually hit anyone or even a pet. So I think that in mind itself that, of course, if you look at it, tech hub technology itself, we are moving into all the EVs that we are looking at. If you look at it, robotics engineering, we have also the AI, data analytics, as he mentioned about LiDAR coming up and stuff. We're also working closely with different sensor company and also the vendors itself to look at how to optimize our safety, but not having it compromise, but at the same time not overdoing it, because too much safety is also unnecessary. But what is enough to also make sure that we respect all road users, because the car itself is not just for the driver, it's also for the passenger, it's also for the cyclists and other road users or pedestrian as well. Because as much as possible, we do understand that driver will have fatigue, but then we cannot take it for granted because some of us will not know where is our fatigue limit. So this kind of technology will be evolving, and also we are doing a lot of re-engineering and engineering internationally to see that how can we make sure that we allow the freedom to move for humans in a safe environment.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. So we've spoken about electrification, we've spoken about safety, the infrastructure, the charging, but Volvo is more about that, more than that. It's also about creating a more sustainable future. Volvo aims to be pioneers in protecting people as well as the planet by working towards net zero, embracing the circular economy as well as improving people's lives. So we are aiming to be climate neutral by 2040 with important milestones on the way, but electrification, as we know, is not enough. While direct emissions are reduced through reduced tailpipe emissions of our EVs, we also need to reduce through indirect emissions, such as emissions from the materials that go into making the car, as well as operational emissions. Now, this would reduce the total carbon emission of a car's entire life cycle. Now, Volvo has already made significant strides towards this goal. For example, the Volvo EX30, which is that beautiful, bright moss yellow car that's right up in front, stands out to be a prime example of Volvo's commitment to sustainability, boasting the lowest carbon footprint of any Volvo model to date. Now, this is largely due to the use of renewable and recyclable materials in its interior. So please take your time to have a look around. If you're interested in learning more about these materials, you can visit the sustainability wall, which is right by the car. There you can explore and touch the 4 different interior trim options that are used in the EX30, and you can discover the innovative materials that make up each one. Now that we've heard from Volvo as well as industry experts, we want to hear from somebody on the ground, a real EV owner. We'd like to invite Mr. Woon to come and join us alongside our panelists to share more on his thoughts and experience living and owning an EV. So first up, thank you for joining us this afternoon, spending your Saturday afternoon with us. Tell us a little bit more about you, Mr. Woon. What do you do and how often are you on the roads?
Yes, welcome. I'm Wee Chang here. You can call me Woon. Yeah, I'm in the real estate industry. So I'm a project manager in the construction sites. So I visit sites and take care of projects. So EVs, this is my first EV. So I use it, I think about 5 days per week. If I go to CBD office, normally I don't drive, so I just take the train. So probably about 5 days per week.
Okay. And you said it's your first EV. What made you make the switch?
My last car ICE car was coming to about 5 years. So I've been looking around for a car to replace my 5 years old car. So I think EV attracts me in terms of I've been doing a lot of research, look at the internet, look at the YouTube, and also look at what are the infrastructure available in Singapore. So I'm glad that I think the Singapore government is pushing very hard to have a lot of infrastructure, especially charging stations. Even though I stay at public housing, my own car park at this moment does not have a charger, but there is a charger at the next car park. So I have decided that forget about ROI, it doesn't work like what Christopher said. So I'm also an early adopter of technology. So I just jumped into that. So that's why when Volvo come out with this EX30, I was very attracted to the design and also the technology, and also there's a good review in terms of the ride handling as well. So that's why I decided to just go and get one.
Okay, pros and cons of owning an EV. What do you like? What do you not like?
I think the ride is the same thing. It's a smooth acceleration, and also it's a quietness. And handling is pretty good because the car is quite heavy. Even the EX30 is about 2 tons. But when you turn the corner, go up the ramp, so from the highway, to me, it feels very safe. So it's quite stable. It doesn't oversteer or understeer. So it's pretty good. The dislike, I guess, is also the anxiety in terms of the range. But as everybody says, Singapore is a city state. It's the best place to have an EV because we are only like 50 kilometer and 30 kilometer in terms of dimension, north, south, east, west. If you go about perimeter, we are probably about 230 kilometer. So I think no issue with so-called EVs.
Okay, so you were driving an ICE before and now you're driving an EV. Anything about your EX30 that surprised you in terms of what you didn't expect coming from an EV?
Yeah, I think the obvious one, of course, is the very high torque. So I think we have to be a bit careful when you drive an EV car compared to ICE car. So I think you have to train our right foot so that it doesn't step too hard because it really moves very fast. Yeah, but I think it's, in a sense that it's good when you want to overtake or you come out from a junction where you want to go to the other lane. So it's pretty good and because it's an instant torque. And also the ride is very quiet. So when I listen to my music and listen to you on a big show, so it's very clear, especially in the morning.
Thank you. We have a few people here that want to buy EVs. Any advice you can give them since you've been driving it for about a year now, right? You said?
Probably about 6 months.
6 months, okay.
Yeah, 6 months. I guess that you have to do your own homework. I think in terms of infrastructure, I think we are there but not there. But I'm glad that I'm just one of the 3%. So in terms of charging, so far, I do not encounter any problems. Most of the time, I want to find charger. The charger is available to me for use. And also, you have to just be a bit mindful of your usage. To me, is that I will try to charge as much as I can when there are chargers available. It's like how I use my iPhone. Because I don't wait until the whole battery depleted, then I go and charge. To me, I just based on what the research that I've done, I think if you can talk about maybe if there's a drop of 20 to 30%, you just go and charge. You don't have to wait until it drops below 50. So far, my battery, I have not dropped below 50.
Below 50?
Yeah, I never. Yeah, I always above 50.
Good planning. I think I've gone down to 8. And then I start to panic. Okay, thank you very much, Ruin. Thank you, Alistair, Chi Kyong, Yvonne, as well as Christopher. If anyone has any questions for any of our panelists or our EV owner, they will be around for a little while longer. And we, of course, invite you to walk around this entire space. All our EVs are on display. There are also Swedish meatballs in the cafe, which I hear are very, very good. So if you're a little bit hungry. So thank you so much for joining us today. There's a lot of stuff to look around and discover about Volvo's EVs. We'll be back again tomorrow at the same time at 3:30. So if you want to invite your friends, your family to join in on this panel discussion, please do so. Thank you very much. My name is Angelique. I'll see you tomorrow.